this quickly.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you for Tony. Prepare our hearts and minds and speak powerfully through him today by your Spirit. In your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Just going to move this out of the way. So, hi, my name's Tony. Quite a lot of you know me. I'm going to be talking today about being passionate about rest. Or at least I would have been talking about being passionate about rest if I hadn't been so busy this week. So I just thought, actually, let's just rest. So I'll sit down now. End of sermon. Actually, I'm just joking. I have actually prepared something, but it was kind of quite a close run thing, because slightly ironically, and I feel a bit of a hypocrite in many ways about this, it's been one of the busiest times of my life, probably over the last month or two, to do with work, and so it's been quite challenging finding the time to prepare to be passionate about rest. And I'll talk a little bit about the sort of struggle that I have juggling work, juggling rest, and so on in a moment. So I'm just going to tell you a story. The story is about a young man who approaches a logging company, and he goes up to them and says, I want you to employ me. I'm a fantastic axeman. Not the kind of axeman that goes around murdering people, but the kind that goes around chopping trees down. And so he goes up to this company and he says, I want you to employ me. And they go, well, why should we? He said, well, actually, I'm pretty good. So they go, the foreman says to him, okay, show me. And he gets out his axe and he starts chopping this tree. And the foreman is just stunned by his technique and by his physical, a bit more than I've got here. In fact, probably quite a lot more. And he fells this tree really skillfully, and the foreman says to him, okay, you start Monday. So the guy comes along Monday morning, and Monday he's hacking through these trees like crazy. And by Thursday, the foreman calls him in, and he says, right, I'm going to pay you off today. And the guy says, hang on, we don't get paid till Friday. And today is Thursday. And the guy said, well, actually, I'm laying you off. And he goes, why? Why are you doing that? And he said, well, you're great on Monday. And as the week has gone by, you've got slowly worse and worse. And your logging, your axe, your tree felling has got much worse. And you're really slow. You're behind the others. In fact, you've been much less productive than anybody else. And the guy said, well, I don't understand. I'm a really good logsman. I've been working. I got here early. I've worked through my breaks. I've finished late. And the guy says to him, did you sharpen your axe? And of course he didn't, because he didn't have time. And there's something in that for all of us, isn't there? We all need to take the time to sharpen our axe, to sharpen the axe of life, as it were. And that axe of life is us. It's the passion that we have for life. It's the stuff that makes us work. It makes us tick. It's our passion to make a difference and to restore ourselves. And Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. We just heard that earlier, didn't we? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that is good news, is it not, for us today? Because, there is so much bombardment, there is so much stuff going on, and we need to hear something like that, and we need to take notice and sharpen our axe and not get so caught up with felling trees that we just tire ourselves out. And I think, from my observation, I think there are a couple of extremes that we can quite easily fall into. One of the extremes, kind of Nelson Mandela, there's a quote from him that says, "As long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest." And that's so true, isn't it? You know, there is so much injustice, there's so much wrong stuff that's happening. And I find myself, falling into that camp so easily. I read a book called Rich Christians in the Age of Hunger when I was a student, and that had a massive influence on me and kind of stopped me from resting, because I just saw all this need out there and I just wanted to keep working and making a difference. And actually, my axe was getting blunt as a result. And that wasn't a helpful work ethic, and it wasn't a helpful ethic to have for my family either. The other extreme, Martha Beck, who's an American sociologist and life coach, said, "Rest until you feel like playing, then play until you feel like resting." We heard from Carolyn and Ruth last week about play, being passionate about play, which is the opposite of, I can't remember what it was. No? Depression, the opposite of depression. Actually playing. We all need more play. I need more play in my life. And I certainly need more rest. So she says, rest until you feel like playing, then play until you feel like resting, period. Has to be American to put period in. Never do anything else. Wow, that's quite a statement, isn't it? Rest until you feel like playing, then play until you feel like resting, period. Never do anything else. And then there's a great one that's kind of somewhere in between, a little bit of a balance, which is Dylan Thomas. He who seeks rest finds boredom. He who seeks work finds rest. Interesting. So my life has been a constant battle of work versus rest. I'm a bit of a workaholic, it has to be said, at times. That's my tendency. Tendency is to give 200% into every job that I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I want to make a difference. I'm involved in health, and therefore, just seeing the need out there. We just see it. We saw it. There's the hospital program on TV with all these bed stuff, and I work in diabetes, so seeing the massive increase in number of people developing diabetes in northwest London, I just want to do something about it. And for me, it's a constant challenge to pull back and not get completely absorbed. I take maybe 2 steps forward and 1.5 steps back all the time. I keep having to reset those boundaries. It's a bit like, for those of you that remember maybe as children, creating walls in the sand that you held. You created this sort of pool of water, and the water is flowing in from further up the beach, and you create this wall, this dam, and every so often a little breach happens in it, and you're trying to shore it all up, and then one happens over here, and you're over here, and it's like that, isn't it? We constantly need to redress the balance, or at least I find myself doing that. I'm not alone, I know that much. And there's so much that is hitting us all the time. There's media, there's internet, there's these things here, these phones that just stimulate us so much. Every time you press a button, it's a little dopamine surge to your brain, to your reward center. We're reward-driven people. I was out walking yesterday, and I've got these goals on my phone to walk so much every day, and I get, ooh, wow, look, haha, I've done my goal. But it's all stuff that's bombarding us all the time, isn't it? And it's not surprising that we find ourselves conflicted. Emails these days take up so much of what we do. 23% of the average employee's day is taken up reading emails. The average employee checks their email 36 times an hour. Apart from those of you that have done time management courses or productivity courses, in which case you know not to do that and to do it much less frequently. There was an interesting research study that was done at University of California, which involved cutting off email for 5 days. And during this time, the participants changed their behaviors. They started doing a lot more face-to-face. They started doing a lot more telephone. They became much more productive. Their stress levels, as measured by heart rate, dropped down. So Ronald Reagan said at one point, I can't remember when, but he said, "It's true, hard work never killed anybody, but I figure why take the chance?" That's a good one, isn't it? But many of us do, don't we? We take that chance that we want to carry on working hard and risk killing ourselves. And we kill ourselves spiritually. We kill ourselves emotionally. We kill ourselves relationally. We kill ourselves physically in this process. And for me, and I'm sure it's true for, just as much true for you as it is for me, or at least for some of you, the core issue is not actually to do with rest. The core issue is to do with trust in God. And we were hearing, we were singing all kinds of songs, Guardian, you walk beside me, you're there behind me, if I remember the words rightly. And we were singing some really deep, intimate lyrics there about trust in God and being close to him and finding that peace. So Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." And he's not talking about God resting on the seventh day, the Sabbath. He's talking about something a lot deeper than that. We can stop work once a week and have a day off, which isn't a bad idea, by the way. There is a reason God suggested it, because it works, it's good. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's more than just taking that time. It's about taking the time to be close to God, to invest that time in relationship with him. And it can be, if we're bombarded all the time, it can be so challenging to do that. So challenging to spend that time to quieten everything down, to turn this off, to turn it over, move away from it, and to respond to him, to spend time meditating on his word. I look at myself and I say, I confess, I'm not great at this. And maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe that's why I'm here, because it's something that I'm passionate about, but I struggle constantly to get that balance right. To what extent do I let God in to take control of my day, to share my worries, my issues, my hopes, my dreams with him? Because he says, "Come to me, you who are weary." Does anybody here feel weary from life? There's a lot to be weary about. I want that rest. I want that rest. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And he says, "Come to me. Come to me. Come to me." Jesus. That's right. Come to me, Jesus. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And it's interesting, so Jesus, unlike me, lives it out. Although I'm probably not quite as bad as I'm making out, because I've learnt a bit. But anyway, so he lives it out. And there's this passage in Mark where he's been doing this ministry all day. And he says to his disciples, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So Jesus practices what he preaches. And he finds that time to spend time with his Father. And we need to hear that. We need to hear him saying that. I spent some time yesterday, really fun time with Andy and Teresa. and Casey and I went off for a walk yesterday, and we walked down to the Dove pub in Hammersmith, about 2.5 miles down there, 2.5 miles back. We had a drink, we had some chips, and then we walked home. On the way home, we said, what actions are we actually going to take? Or was that in the pub? I can't remember. Anyway, we said, what actions are we going to take? Because we were talking about stuff, issues of life and, sharing some deep stuff. So my action from that was to practice what I'm preaching, which is to take rest, to find that time to rest. So there are some things that I do, and maybe these things might be helpful for you. So once a night, we have a family night as our family, and I cook pizza, and we have a movie generally. I have a date night with Katie nearly every week. We go walking every other week. I'm trying to walk 1,000 miles this year. That's my goal, which actually isn't too difficult. If you look at the numbers, it's about 2.5 miles a day. So it's not too tricky. I try and make homemade food, pizza, bread, curry night. I've got a curry night on Saturday nights with Zoe, which is really fun. But for me, the real challenge is to go deeper with God, to find more time to spend with him, and for it to be a deeply intentional time of relationship. I get too easily distracted by the stuff that's on here, by the work stuff, by the kind of, just worrying about life and the stuff that's going, there's plenty to worry about with, so much change, Brexit and Trump and all those sort of things that are happening at the moment that, are of great concern. But actually God is in charge. I'm not in charge. I cannot be in charge. I don't want to be in charge. But I try and make myself in charge of what's happening. And that doesn't work. And I need to find that rest, because otherwise, like Ronald Reagan says, I die. I die emotionally, I die spiritually, I die relationally. Because all this stuff takes time and it saps energy. So Mike Clarkson, who was our vicar 2 vicars ago now, back in the 90s, he used to have this lovely sort of picture of trying to get some rocks and some sand into a jar. And he said, well, you don't try and put the sand in first and then the rocks afterwards, because it doesn't work that way. You can't fit all of the rocks in. You first put your rocks in, and then the sand flows. And that's basically what I'm saying. The rocks are the important things, the rocks of our life: faith, prayer, meditation, understanding our identity in Christ. Because if our identity isn't absolutely built on his foundation, then whatever we do is like sand. It's like we're building on sand. I'm just going to finish with a story about a guy called Frank Lloyd Wright. You may well never have heard of him, but he was a famous American architect at the beginning of last century. So, and he created these buildings that, if you look at them around sort of the 1900s, 1915, 1920s, they're sort of things that you would have thought had been designed in the 70s or 80s. They're so modern, so avant-garde for that time. So as a boy, he used to spend a lot of time on his uncle's farm. And that was one of the most formative experiences of his life. He was 9, it was a winter's day, and he and his uncle had walked across a snow-covered field. Frank's uncle stopped the young boy and pointed to the tracks they had left in the snow. Frank's meandered all over the place. He was kind of just, the way young children do. They kind of walk around, they look at things. And his uncle's was in a straight line. And when they finished that walk, he looked back across the field, and the uncle said to him, "Notice how your tracks wander aimlessly from the fence to the cattle to the woods and back again," his uncle said. "And see how my tracks aim directly to my goal. There's an important lesson in that." Years later, the world-famous architect pointed to the important lesson he had learnt that day, but it wasn't the lesson his uncle had intended. "I had determined right then," he said, "not to miss most things in life as my uncle had." Isn't that true? And that applies even more to our spiritual identity, to our spiritual health, to our spiritual value, to spending time with God, spending time praying, meditating, even more than it does to things like walking across a field. So I'm going to finish there with that and a prayer. Father, thank you that you are here. You care deeply about us. Our lives are hidden with you in Christ. You call us out upon the waters. You call us to find you. You call us to seek your face. You've made yourself found or findable to us. You've revealed yourself to us. Thank you, Lord. Thank you that in you there is hope. In you there is life. In you there is everything that we need. And Lord, for those of us who've maybe found the balance difficult, Lord, we thank you that your yoke is light and your burden is easy. So Lord, we just turn to you. We turn to you. Knowing that you are there, that you will answer, that there is nothing that we have to do to make ourselves more acceptable in your sight. Jesus did it all on the cross. There is nothing that we can add. There is nothing that we can take away. So Lord, we come to you as we are, knowing that you call us children, knowing that you value us, knowing that there is nothing that we can add or that we need to do. And Lord, we just thank you. You might want to put your arms out and just accept his gift, his Spirit. Father, thank you that all that we need to do with the gift is accept it and live it out. Amen.